The shotgun blast echoed through the cornstalks like God's own thunder, ripping the summer air apart and sending birds exploding from the trees. I dropped to my knees in the mud, my hands slick with something warm and metallic, his blood, not mine, and stared at the man who'd just saved my life, his eyes wide with shock as the life drained out of them. "Adam," he whispered, his voice a ragged gasp that cut deeper than any bullet. "Don't let this be for nothing." And just like that, Nathaniel Harrington, the millionaire who'd upended my world, was gone, leaving me holding a smoking gun and a secret that could burn down everything we'd built. That was 6 months ago, but it feels like yesterday every time I close my eyes. My name's Adam Whitaker, and back then, I was just a broke ex-con scraping by in the Dust Bowl towns of central Kansas, where the wind howls like it's got a grudge and the soil clings to your boots like regret. I'd done my time. 5 years in Leavenworth for a bar fight that went sideways, a stupid swing that left a guy paralyzed. Assault with a deadly weapon, they called it. Society called me a monster. But out here in the heartland, monsters get second chances if they're willing to break their backs in the fields. It started with a classified ad in the Topeka Capital Journal, buried in the want ads like it was a shame to be seen. Experienced farmhand needed for 500-acre spread in Riley County. No resume required. Room and board provided. Contact N. Harrington. Simple as that. I'd circled it in red pencil, my coffee-stained fingers trembling because who'd hire a felon without questions? But desperation has a way of sharpening your edges, so I called the number from a payphone outside the diner where I washed dishes for tips. "Whitaker Farm Services," a voice answered, smooth as aged bourbon, with that clipped East Coast accent that screamed old money. "This is Adam Whitaker. Saw your ad. I got 10 years on cattle ranches in Oklahoma before. Well, before. I work hard, keep my head down." A pause, then a low chuckle that sent a shiver down my spine. "Warm, like sunlight on frostbitten skin." "Before what, Mr. Whitaker? Prison? I know your record. Leavenworth, wasn't it? 5 years for nearly killing a man over a spilled beer. My gut twisted. You pulling my leg? If you know that, why?" "Because I need someone who understands redemption, Adam. Someone who stared into the abyss and crawled out. Be here tomorrow at dawn. The address is Harrington Acres, off K-13. Don't be late." Click. No name, no pleasantries. Just a summons. I hitchhiked through the night, thumbs black with highway grime, arriving as the first pink streaks bled into the sky. The place was a kingdom, endless fields of wheat and soy waving like golden seas. A sprawling Victorian farmhouse with wraparound porches and gabled roofs that looked like it belonged in a Ken Burns documentary. Barns red as fresh paint, silos gleaming silver. It screamed wealth, the kind that buys silence and second chances. A Jeep Wrangler pulled up, dust swirling like a halo around its tires. Out stepped him, Nathaniel Harrington, mid-40s but carrying it like a vintage scotch, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair cropped close and eyes the color of storm clouds over the plains. He wore faded Levi's and a flannel shirt rolled to his elbows, but there was no mistaking the Rolex peeking from his cuff or the quiet command in his stride. Millionaire landlord? Hell, he owned half the county, or so the whispers in town would later tell me. "Adam," he said, extending a hand that swallowed mine whole. Calloused from reins, not keyboards. "Welcome to the madhouse." We shook, and something electric passed between us, like the hum of a live wire buried in the earth. I chalked it up to nerves, but his gaze lingered a beat too long, tracing my jaw like he was memorizing a map. That first week was a blur of dawn-to-dusk labor, mending fences that stretched to the horizon, baling hay until my arms screamed mutiny, irrigating fields under a sun that baked the doubt right out of you. Nathaniel worked alongside me, not like some overseer barking orders, but elbow-deep in the dirt, his laugh booming when a calf butted him in the gut or when we'd race John Deeres across the pasture like kids on dirt bikes. He was a widower, he said. Wife lost to cancer 5 years back, no kids. Inherited the land from his daddy, turned it into an organic empire that shipped heirloom tomatoes to Whole Foods in New York. But there was a shadow in his stories, a hesitation when he spoke of Boston, where he'd gone to Harvard for agribusiness before coming home to bury his roots. Nights, we'd sit on the porch with cold cores and plates of ribs from the smoker, fireflies dancing like errant stars. That's when the walls started cracking. You ever feel like you're running from yourself? He'd ask, staring into the dark, his knee brushing mine accidental-like. All the time. I'd mutter, heart pounding because his proximity stirred something I'd buried deep in prison. Loneliness sharpened into longing. I'd always known I was gay, but in roughneck towns, that knowledge was a loaded gun you kept pointed inward. Coming out? That was for city boys with trust funds, not farmhands with rap sheets. One evening, after a thunderstorm had flooded the lower 40, we were knee-deep in muck, hauling sandbags till our backs bowed like willows. Lightning cracked the sky, and Nathaniel slipped, tumbling into the torrent. I lunged, grabbing his collar, pulling him against me as the water roared. We clung there, soaked and gasping, his chest heaving against mine, faces inches apart. Rain blurred his features, but I saw it. The hunger in his eyes, mirroring my own. Our breaths mingled, hot and ragged, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd close the gap. But he pulled back, cursing under his breath. "Damn fool," he said, though I wasn't sure if he meant the storm or us. We trudged back to the house in silence, the air thick with unspoken thunder. The next morning, everything shifted. Over black coffee in the kitchen, linoleum floors worn smooth by generations, Nathaniel slid a folder across the table. "Read this." Inside, newspaper clippings from 15 years back. My face, younger and wild-eyed, splashed across the Topeka paper. Local teen in brutal attack, victim paralyzed. But buried deeper, a smaller article. Harrington heir assaulted in campus brawl. Family covers up, gay panic defense. My blood ran cold. What the hell is this? Nathaniel leaned back, fingers steepled. "That was me, Adam. The victim in your trial?" "Not quite. I was the Harrington kid at KU, drunk and stupid, picking a fight with a homophobe in a dive bar. You stepped in, saved my ass from a beating that could have ended worse. But I panicked. Testified you were the aggressor, unprovoked. My family buried it, paid off the real perp to disappear. You took the fall for protecting me." The room spun. All those years in a cell, the shame, the isolation, it was for him. "You let me rot," I whispered, voice cracking like dry earth. "Why hire me now?" Guilt trip. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes, filled with a pain that mirrored my rage. Redemption, remember? I've spent years building this life to atone. Organic farms for at-risk youth, scholarships for ex-cons. But you, seeing your name in that ad, it hit like a freight train. I had to make it right. And Adam, he reached across, his hand hovering over mine. "There's more. That night in the rain, it wasn't the storm I was fighting." The confession hung there, raw and electric. He was gay too, had been since college, but the Harrington name demanded closets deeper than tornado cellars. His marriage? A shield, crumbling after her death. And me? I'd been his ghost, haunting those clippings, the one who'd seen him vulnerable and hadn't flinched. We didn't kiss that day. Words were enough to ignite the fire, but trust? That was a crop you planted slow. Over weeks, it grew, stolen glances over pitchforks, hands brushing in the tack room, conversations that peeled back layers like husking corn. He told me about the pressure, boardrooms in Chicago expecting heirs, not honesty, the bottle he'd crawled out of after her funeral. I shared my prison nights, the whispers of love in the shadows that ended in shivs and silence. We were two men forged in secrecy, finding solace in the soil. But paradise has weeds. Town gossip started. The reclusive millionaire shacking up with a jailbird. Then came the letters, anonymous, typed on cheap stock. "We know what you are, Harrington. Keep it in the barn." Nathaniel burned them, but fear rooted deep. One crisp October afternoon, as we harvested pumpkins under a sky like spilled milk, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, face paling. "Family's coming. My brother, Edward, from Boston. Board meeting tomorrow." Edward Harrington, the golden child, CEO of the family conglomerate, married to a senator's daughter, with two perfect kids and a Bible quote for every occasion. Nathaniel's shadow, the one who'd orchestrated the cover-up all those years ago. "Don't let him run you off," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. But doubt not. Could I stand beside him when his world came calling? That night, As leaves skittered across the porch like fleeing secrets, Nathaniel pulled me close for the first time. No rain, no excuses, just his lips on mine, tasting of whiskey and wheat, tentative then fierce. We held each other under the harvest moon, bodies speaking what words couldn't. This was real, worth fighting for. But Edward arrived like a nor'easter, his SUV gleaming like Judgment Day, flanked by suits from the city. Dinner was a minefield, crystal glasses clinking like accusations, Edward's eyes dissecting me over filet mignon. So, Nate, this your latest charity case? Ex-con farm boy. Charming. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Adam's the best hand I've had. Saved the lower 40 from that flood single-handed. Edward smirked, swirling his wine. Hand? Or something more? Town's buzzing, brother. Daddy's rolling in his grave. The air crackled. I excused myself, but not before seeing the fracture. Nathaniel's hand trembling on his fork. Later, alone in the bunkhouse, rage boiled over. How could Nathaniel bring this viper into our home? Was I just a prop, a redemption token to parade? I confronted him at midnight, storming the farmhouse. Is that what I am? Your gay experiment to spite the family? His face crumpled. No, Adam. God, no. Edward's poison, always has been. He covered for me back then, paid you off indirectly through settlements. But it was his idea to let you take the fall. Keep the Harrington name clean. The truth landed like a gut punch. And now, he knows about us. Nathaniel nodded, defeated. He always suspected. Threatened to cut me off unless I straighten up. But I can't lose you. Not now. We argued till dawn, voices raw, hearts exposed. I stormed out, driving his old Ford into the fields, tires churning mud as fury blinded me. How deep did the lies go? Was our love built on atonement or something truer? Days blurred into a cold war. Work continued, mechanical, the spark dimmed to embers. Then the anonymous letters escalated. Photos now. Us on the porch, blurred but unmistakable. Expose or else. Paranoia gripped Nathaniel. He installed cameras, changed locks, but trust eroded like riverbanks in flood. It's Edward, he confided one night, voice hollow. He's testing me. One wrong move, and the board votes me out. I wanted to believe him, but doubt whispered, what if it's you? What if I'm the fool again? The breaking point came mid-November, frost silvering the stubble fields. Edward summoned Nathaniel to Boston for family business. He left at dawn, kissing my forehead like a goodbye. Wait for me. We'll face this together. But waiting is hell for a man with ghosts. Alone, I rifled his desk, desperation's old habit, and found the folder. Not clippings, but emails. From Edward, dated weeks back. Hire the Whitaker kid. Remind him of his place. If he gets too close, we'll bury him again. For the family's sake. Betrayal hit like buckshot. Nathaniel had known. Hired me not just for guilt, but as bait? To draw out my rage, prove I was still the monster? Or worse, to sacrifice me to Edward's homophobia. Keep his inheritance intact? Rage blinded. I drove to the airstrip outside Manhattan, Kansas, where his private jet idled. Tires screeched as I blocked the runway, shotgun from the truck. His, loaded for coyotes, pumped and ready. You son of a bitch. I roared as he stepped down the stairs, Edward flanking him like a hyena. Adam, what the? You used me. Emails, Nathaniel. You knew he'd come for us, and you played me like a damn pawn. Edward sneered. Told you he was unhinged, Nate. Violent tendencies. Water seeks its level. Nathaniel's face drained of color. Adam, listen. But Edward moved first, lunging for the gun with a practiced grab, self-defense classes for the elite. The struggle was chaos, gravel flying, shouts echoing across the tarmac. The shotgun barked, not from my hand, but as it twisted free, barrel swinging wild. The blast caught Edward square, blood blooming on his pristine shirt like an accusation. He crumpled, gasping, eyes locking on Nathaniel's in betrayal. Brother, what? Nathaniel dropped beside him, cradling his head, tears carving tracks through the dust. No, Eddie, no. I stood frozen, the empty gun slipping from numb fingers. The real reason he'd chosen me? Not just guilt. To force a reckoning. To make me the catalyst for Edward's downfall, expose the family's rot. But in that moment, as sirens wailed distant, I saw the truth. Nathaniel had loved me enough to risk it all, But love built on lies crumbles fast. Cops swarmed, cuffs cold on my wrists again. Nathaniel's testimony saved me. Self-defense, he swore. Edward's aggression documented in those emails I printed. But the scandal exploded. Harrington Empire in freefall. Headlines screaming, "Gay cover-up rocks agribusiness dynasty." Protests outside boardrooms. Queer activists chanting for justice. I walked free after a month. Charges dropped. But freedom tasted like ash. Nathaniel vanished into rehab. Whiskey demons clawing back. Letters came, scrawled on linen paper. I lied to protect us, but it poisoned everything. Forgive me, or don't. Just live, Adam. For both of us. I returned to Harrington Acres, not his hand, but owner, his gift in the will he drew up that night, before Edward's death. The farm thrived under my hands, but nights were hollow echoes. 2 years on, under a sky bruised purple with twilight, I stood at the grave, Edward's, not Nathaniel's. He'd survived, emerged sober, but the board exiled him. Last I heard, he was in San Francisco, starting a co-op for queer farmers, building from the ground up. Forgiveness? It's a seed, slow to sprout. But in the quiet fields, I feel him still. The man who chose me, shocked the world, and taught me love's sharpest edge. It's never clean, but damn if it's not worth the bleed. The will reading was a circus, lawyers in pinstripes circling like vultures over Edward's mahogany desk in the Boston club where the Harringtons had sealed deals for generations. Crystal decanters of scotch sat untouched. Irony, since booze had nearly undone us all. I sat ramrod straight in a leather wingback that smelled of cigar smoke and old betrayals, my work boots scuffing the Persian rug like an insult. The family's eyes bored into me. Aunts with pearl clutches, cousins with sneers polished by Andover educations. They expected a thug, fresh from cuffs. Instead, they got a ghost, pale and hollowed by the what-ifs. Mr. Whitaker, the attorney droned, spectacles perched like a judge's gavel. Mr. Harrington, Nathaniel, that is, has bequeathed you full ownership of Harrington Acres, including all appurtenances and liquid assets tied thereto. Approximately $12 million, post-taxes. Gasps rippled like wind through corn. An uncle, red-faced, scotch-plump, slammed his fist. Preposterous. The boy's a killer. Eddie dead because of him. Killer. I echoed, voice steady as Kansas clay. Your golden boy attacked first. Emails prove it. His plot to handle me, keep the family closet bolted shut. Nathaniel chose truth over empire. Deal with it. The room erupted, but I walked out into a December sleet that stung like accusations. Freedom, they called it. But driving that rented Impala back to Riley County, past billboards hawking Black Friday sales and Jesus billboards promising salvation, I felt the weight. A farm, a fortune, a legacy stained with blood. Was this atonement or another cage? Harrington Acres greeted me like a prodigal's embrace. Fields fallow under first snow, the farmhouse lights flickering like a heartbeat. Mrs. Ellis, the cook who'd mothered Nathaniel since he was knee-high, enveloped me in a flour-dusted hug. He knew you'd come back, lamb. Left instructions, plant the cover crop yourself. Adam's hands, he wrote. They make things grow. Her words cracked something in me, tears hot on cold cheeks. I spent that night in his study, poring over ledgers by lamplight. The farm wasn't just dirt, it was Nathaniel's soul, sustainable plots feeding food banks, apprenticeships for kids like I'd been, rough-edged and rootless. He'd poured his guilt into the ground, turning poison into plenty. And now, it was mine to steward or squander. Winter clamped down hard, blizzards howling like the Furies. I hired on locals, widows, vets, a trans kid from Salina with a green thumb and a guarded smile. We mucked stalls, repaired greenhouses shattered by ice, shared thermoses of spiked cider by the wood stove. Stories flowed, my prison tales sanitized for the young ones, their scars laid bare in the firelight. Community, Nathaniel had called it. I'd scoffed then, now it was lifeline. But solitude crept in at edges, sharp as barbed wire. Nights, I'd wander the pastures, breath fogging in the star-pricked dark, replaying that tarmac tableau. Edward's gasp, Nathaniel's wail. Had I pulled the trigger in my heart long before? The emails burned in my mind. Edward's scheme, yes, but Nathaniel's silence? Complicity, or the desperate calculus of a man trapped in his skin. A package arrived in February, FedEx from Frisco. No return address, just a scrawled N. Inside, a worn journal, leather cover cracked like old hide. Pages filled with his script. Tight. Looping, like he'd wrestled each word onto paper. January 5th. Detox is hell, Adam. Shakes like withdrawal from you. Edward's ghost haunts, his hate mine. I hired you to fix my fracture, but you mended something deeper. Forgive the fracture lines. February 12th. Co-ops budding. Queer farmers from Oakland to Portland, pooling land against the core. Your farm's the blueprint. Sustainable, unapologetic. Wish you were here, knee-deep in mud, laughing at my city-soft hands. I devoured it cover to cover, heart aching with the intimacy of ink. Poems, half-formed, sonnets to sunrises over soy, elegies to the wife who'd known his truth and loved anyway, and letters to me, unsent missives spilling love like overripe fruit. You're the horizon I chased, Adam. Steady vast. Don't let my mess eclipse your dawn. Rage softened to ache, then resolve. I wrote back, pages torn from a feed store notebook, raw as fresh-plowed earth. Your journal's my plow, Nathaniel. Turning soil, turning pages. The farm breathes because of you. Me? Still finding my footing. But the door's open. Always. Spring thawed the ground, and with it, the world. Media vans camped the gate, Dateline specials on the Harrington scandal, op-eds in the New York Times dissecting closet capitalism. Protests swelled, rainbow flags waving for queer rights in AG, pickets against corporate homophobia. I granted one interview to a kid reporter from Kansas State, voice steady. This ain't about money. It's about men loving men without apology. Nathaniel showed me that. Edward tried to bury it. We're planting instead. The farm became a beacon. Tours for city folk craving dirt under nails. Workshops on permaculture laced with coming-out circles. Revenue soared, but so did threats. Slashed tires, graffiti on the barn, Sodom's soil. Local church deacons thundered from pulpits, calling down fire on the deviant dynasty. One muggy June evening, as cicadas chorused like a Greek tragedy, trouble brewed literal. A bonfire rally on the county line. Militia types with AR-15s slung casual, Bibles and beer in hand, chanting against the gay agenda poisoning our heartland. Their target? My fields, the abomination acres. I drove out alone, shotgun on the seat, not for blood, but boundary. Headlights cut the dark, illuminating a sea of red caps and rage. A burly guy in Carhartt stepped forward, spit tobacco at my tires. Whitaker, heard you're turning good Christian land into a fairy frolic. Time to repent or relocate. Laughter rippled, ugly as barbed wire. My pulse thrummed, Leavenworth flashbacks, fists flying in the yard. But I thought of Nathaniel's journal. Fight with words first, Adam. Soil, not shivs. Repent, I said, stepping out slow, hands visible. For loving a man who saved my soul? For growing food that feeds your kids? This land's fed Kansas since the Dust Bowl. It don't care about your hate. Murmurs swelled to snarls. A bottle sailed, shattering on the hood. Beer, not Molotov, thank God. Then, from the shadows, a voice. Enough. Nathaniel. Emerging from his Jeep like a specter, clean-shaven, eyes clear as spring creeks. The crowd hushed, stunned. The prodigal returned, sober and unbowed. Brother's gone, he said, voice carrying like a plow through sod. But his poison lingers. I hid who I am for this family, this land. No more. Adam's not the villain. You are, with your fear-mongering. Go home. Hug your wives, your God. Leave love to grow. A beat, then Exodus, grumbling, but tails tucked. We stood there after, flames dying to embers, his hand finding mine in the glow. You came, I breathed. Always, he replied, pulling me into the truck. We drove in silence, the journal's words bridging the miles. Back at the farmhouse, under a canopy of stars thick as promises, we talked till the horizon pinked. No grand gestures, just truths, peeled bare. I should have burned those emails, he admitted, voice rough. But Edward, he was my mirror, the hate I feared in myself. Hiring you was selfish, to heal us both. And the farm? I asked, thumb tracing his knuckles. Ours now, if you'll have it. Me. The kiss was dawn, slow, certain, tasting of second chances. Not fireworks, but hearth fire, warm, enduring. Summer deepened, our rhythms sinking like seasons. We worked the land side by side, his city polish yielding to calluses, my scars fading in the sun. The co-op expanded, cross-country collectives, queer voices in boardrooms. Threats ebbed, allies bloomed. But peace has tempests. In August, a letter from the DA reopened investigation. New witness, some rally hanger-on claiming I goaded Edward. Malice aforethought, it read. Panic clot. They'll bury you again, Nathaniel said, pacing the kitchen, ghosts of Leavenworth in his eyes. Not without a fight. I hired a lawyer from Wichita, sharp, out, who'd cut her teeth on Stonewall echoes. Depositions dragged, headlines reignited, farmhands reckoning, murder or mercy? The trial loomed in September, courthouse in Junction City, buzzing like a hive. Nathaniel testified first, voice steady. Adam acted in defense. Of me, of us. Edward's emails show the threat. Love doesn't kill, hate does. My turn. The stand a crucible, jury faces impassive as granite. I spoke of the bar fight long ago, the injustice that forged me. I swung to protect a stranger. Took the fall for a brother's secret. Now, I'd swing again for love. The foreman deliberated 2 hours. Verdict, not guilty. Courtroom erupted. Hugs from strangers, Nathaniel's arms my anchor. Outside, under maples aflame with autumn, reporters swarmed. But we slipped away, to the fields where it began. Fall's palette painted the acres in fire. Crimson sumac, amber oaks, pumpkins swelling like secrets in the patch. The acquittal lifted a pall, but scars linger like frost pockets, chilling the bones. Nathaniel and I dove into harvest, scything wheat with rhythms honed by trial and touch, but whispers followed. Townies at the co-op eyeing us wary, old clients canceling shipments with polite regrets. Family values. One email read, laced with scripture. We pushed through, building resilience like compost heaps, layering hurt with hope. Nathaniel's co-op linked us to a network. Queer growers in Vermont apple orchards, Texas pecan groves, California vineyards. Virtual town halls crackled with stories, evictions for pride flags, loans denied for moral hazards. Our farm became hub, hosting retreats, flannel shirt men and women tilling soil by day, sharing circles by night. Laughter echoed where silence once reigned, bonds forged in vulnerability. Yet, intimacy was tentative tango. We'd wake tangled in his four-poster, sheets scented with earth in him. But mornings brought hesitation, his hand pausing on my hip, eyes distant. The boards circling, he'd confess over oatmeal. They want the acres back, call it reclamation for the estate. Edward's death had fractured the empire, stock plummets, lawsuits from shareholders decrying moral bankruptcy. Cousins plotted buyouts, lawyers sniffing for leverage. Marry me. Nathaniel urged one dusk, ring from his mother's hope chest glinting in the gloaming. Legal armor. Show him we're unbreakable. I laughed, bitter as chicory. Marriage? In Kansas, where they still debate bakery cakes. We're farmers, Nate, not poster boys. But doubt-seated. Nights, I'd trace his sleeping face, wondering, was this love or logistics? The journal's confessions echoed, his fear of half-lives, the closet's slow suffocation. I wanted him whole, not welded to me for defense. November brought the gale, a corporate raider from Chicago, backed by Harrington holdouts, filing eminent domain. Claim, public interest, turning organic fields to fracking pads, pipelines snaking under sod like veins of greed. Public hearing in the county seat, a brick relic packed with overalls and outrage. We arrived arm in arm, a statement in scuffed boots and wedding band hints. Testimonies flew, hydrologist on poisoned aquifers, a mom whose kid's asthma flared post-drill. My turn. This land fed my family through the depression, droughts, divorces. It's not dirt, it's legacy. Nathaniel and I steward it for tomorrow, not tomorrow's profit. The raider's suit sneered from the dais. Sentimental tripe. Progress demands sacrifice. Your arrangement? Distraction from mismanagement. Murmurs swelled to jeers. Nathaniel rose, voice thunder. Arrangement? That's love, you bloodsucker. And this farm? It's feeding 500 families yearly, carbon sequestering more than your pipelines spew. Back off. The vote swung 7-2 our way, cheers deafening. But victory's Pyrrhic, raiders appealed the state, dragging us to Topeka. Winter solstice, we escaped to the cabin on the creek, a lean-to Nathaniel's dad built for fishing fugues. Snow muffled the world, pine crackling in the stove. There, barriers crumbled. I proposed wrong, he said, handing me cider mulled with cinnamon. Not shield, but vow. Marry me because you want the mornings, the muck, the man. Tears pricked, mine unashamed. Yes, for all of it. Spring wedding, barefooted under the big oak, officiant a Unitarian from Lawrence with rainbow stole. Guests, co-op kin, Mrs. Ellis weeping into her hanky, a fiddler sawing Shenandoah. Vows we wrote in the journal's margins. In furrow and fallow, I choose you. Honeymoon. The road, driving Route 66 remnants, motels with neon hearts, diners dishing pie and prying eyes. In Oklahoma Panhandle, we danced to jukebox wailin', his hand on my waist possessive, defiant. Back home, bliss buffered blows. The appeal dragged, but allies mobilized, Sierra Club briefs, queer caucuses lobbying. Then, gut punch, Nathaniel's diagnosis. Prostate cancer, caught early-ish from a routine check. Manageable, doc said, but his eyes, storm clouds gathering. Chemo started subtle, fatigue shadowing his vigor, hair shedding like autumn leaves. I shaved his head by candlelight, our ritual tender as sacrament. Bald looks good on you, I teased, kissing the crown. He laughed, weak but true. Liar. But keep lying, it suits us. The fight deepened our weave, me driving to infusions in Wichita, him sketching co-op expansions from the lazy boy. But fear festered. What if I lost him, the horizon I'd claimed? Summer scorched, appeals climaxing in a Topeka courtroom sweltering as Hades. The judge, a grizzled ex-farmer with a drawl like gravel, eyed us over bifocals. Raiders team hammered. Emotional appeals over economics. The land's wasted on boutique organics. Our counsel countered. Data on yields, testimonials from fed families. Then Nathaniel, frail but fierce, took the stand. Cancer's teaching me legacies, not ledgers. This farm, it's life, mine, Adam's, yours. Drill it, and you kill the heart. Jury deliberated through a heat wave. Verdict, dismissed. Elation crashed like waves. Wept in the hallway, strangers clapping our backs. But cancer doesn't court adjourn. Scans soured, Mets to bones. Hospice talks loomed, a horizon darkening. We rallied the co-op, fundraisers and farm stands. GoFundMe surging with stories for the man who planted pride. Nathaniel directed from bed, voice a rasp, but spirit steel. Write the charter, Adam. Queer Land Trust, irrevocable. I did, fingers flying on his old underwood, typewriter clacking like resolve. Fall waned, leaves carpeting paths. One amber afternoon, as combines droned distant, he called me to the porch. Remember the rain? First touch. I nodded, throat tight. Write our story, he urged, hand in mine. Not for pity, for power. Show him love outlasts empires. That night, fever spiked. I held him through chills, whispering vows anew. Dawn broke, and he slipped, peaceful, breath easing to echo. Grief hollowed me, a silo emptied. Funeral, fields packed, eulogies from coast to prairie. Nathaniel Harrington, farmer, fighter, family. I buried the journal with him, but kept the charge. The trust formalized, acres deeded eternal to queer stewards. Winter gripped, but seeds stir. I walk the rows, feeling his hand in the wind, steady, vast. Solstice passed in a veil of frost, the shortest day stretching eternal in my chest. Harrington acres slumbered under snow's white shroud, greenhouses glowing like lanterns against the night. I moved through routines mechanical, feeding livestock at dawn's grudging light, tallying yields by ledger lamplight, mentoring apprentices who tiptoed around my silence. They meant well. Extra coffee slipped into my thermos, shoulders offered for burdens unspoken, but grief's a solitary plow, furrowing deep. The trust launched in January, christened Harrington Horizon, a legal bulwark ensuring the land's queer stewardship, immune to raids or revanches. Press descended. NPR spots on rural resilience. Out magazine profiles framing us as heartland heroes. I demurred, camera shy, but spoke truths when pressed. Nathaniel didn't die for headlines. He lived for legacy. It's his harvest. Revenue steadied, diversified, CSA boxes shipped nationwide, infused with his recipes. Lavender honey from the hives we tended, heirloom beans simmered slow. Profits funneled to scholarships. Ex-cons like me, queer youth fleeing Bible belts. One kid, Jamie from Wichita, non-binary, tattooed with wildflowers, arrived wary, wielding a hoe like a shield. Heard about the ghost farm, they quipped on day one. Love that haunts the corn. I chuckled, first real since the porch. More like guides it. Stick around, you'll see. Spring unfurled tentative, crocuses piercing snow like hopes. I planted the cover crop as instructed, clover and rye, nitrogen-kissed for summer's surge. Kneeling in the furrow, soil cool and loamy under palms, I whispered to the earth, "Your hands, Nate." Still growing. Letters trickled. From the co-op, tales of new groves thriving. From Boston cousins, stiff apologies laced with regret. Edward's widow sent a check for the boys' education fund, though we had none. I donated it to the trust, anonymous. May bloomed riots of color. Iris's Nathaniel favored nodding purple heads. The annual retreat swelled. 50 souls under the big tent, workshops on grafting and grace. Bonfire nights, guitars strumming folk anthems, stories circling like fireflies. First loves lost to conversion camps, found families forged in feedlots. Jamie shared theirs, a runaway arc from foster hell to field hands, voice cracking, then steadying in the circle's hold. I spoke last, journals echo in my throat. Love's not a straight line. It's the bend in the creek, the twist in the vine. Nathaniel taught me that, bent but unbroken. Applause washed warm, but tears traced cold. Later, alone by the creek, skipping stones into moon-silvered ripples, a rustle startled. Jamie, blanket draped. Can't sleep. Ghosts. Always. I patted the log. Sit. Tell me yours. We talked till stars wheeled. Their dreams of a vineyard commune, my fears of fading into footnote. You're not ghosting, they said fierce. You're the damn foundation. Summer hummed, heat waves shimmering horizons. The trust expanded, adjacent acres bought, a community kitchen rising from the old silo. Fundraisers packed the barn, hayrides with queer historians spinning Dust Bowl drag tales, auctions of Nathaniel's sketches, pastels of plowhorses and lovers' silhouettes. Threats lingered faint. A cross burned on the fence line, anonymous, but neighbors doused it before dawn, shotguns slung neighborly. Ain't right. Old Mr. Larson grumbled, handing me pie. Nate was good people. You too. Fall harvested bounty. Pumpskins carved with pride symbols, sold at state fairs to cheers and converts. The anniversary approached, that fatal November day. I marked it solo, tarmac revisited in mind. Shotguns echo a dull thud. But redemption's circular. A call from Frisco, Co-op Summit, keynote slot. Your story, Adam. Inspire the roots. I flew west, palms sweating runways. The stage overlooked bay fog. Audience a mosaic of flannel and fedoras. Mic in hand, voice steady. I was hired for guilt, loved for grace. Lost him to legacy. But here's the shock. He chose me to shock the world. And damn if it didn't work. Q&A flowed, questions on loss, logistics, love's logistics. Backstage, a man waited, silver-haired, eyes familiar storm. Nathaniel's old mentor from Harvard, now activist elder. He'd be proud, he said, clasping my arm. Wrote me before. Everything. Said you were his horizon. Tears welled. Still am. Homebound. Resolve rooted deeper. Winter whispered end, but I planned ahead. Expansion to solar arrays. Wind turbines spinning queer-powered futures. Solstice Eve, full moon silvering fields. I walked the porch, our porch. Wind carried his laugh, faint but fierce. One year, I murmured, miss you like drought. A star shot, tail blazing. Omen? Or just physics? Either way, hope's hardy. Now, as snow dusts anew, the acres pulses, apprentices laughing in the loft, Jamie leading a grafting class, trust deeds inked eternal. I stand at the grave, journals ghost in pocket, love outlasts. It does. Bent but blooming, we grow.